Hi everyone, Raptor here. So, I recently went 5-0 with Mindstorm, and a lot of people have been having questions about the deck on the Pauper subreddit. A lot of people are surprised about it, and I don't blame them. A lot had it right to get a 5-0 with this deck, but it's a pretty fun deck. I enjoy playing it, and it's kind of nice to see people are interested in it. So I thought I would try and talk about how it works. So, for those who are unaware, the general idea of this list is to use cards like Inner Fire to generate a copious amount of mana, and then eventually you channel all of that mana into a Rolling Thunder and kill your opponent. Now, this may seem hard to do on paper, but with how this deck is built, it's actually not too difficult. So the first thing we have to, figure out is how do we add enough mana for Inner Fire, right? Because the first copy, like let's assume you have 8 cards in hand, right? You draw a card for the turn, you have 8 in hand. The first copy is only going to generate 7 mana, which means that it's netting 3 mana total, which is really not a lot, and you're not going to be able to fireball someone with that rate. So it turns out that cards like Yush are really important because Yush allows you to essentially fill up your hand and start going off. Because if you have 8 cards in hand, you cast Yush, and then you go up to 11 cards in hand, and then you cast Inner Fire, you go up to 10 mana in your pool. Like, that's a substantial amount, you know? So that's one of the general ideas, that you start out with combo turn with things like Yush, Inner Fire, then you start casting Metamorphose, and then the payoff is Sprouting Minds Tolarian Winds. So, Sprouting Minds allows you to search your library for a basic land card, you reveal it, and then you put it into your hand, and then you shuffle your library. Now, the important part is that we have the Storm mechanic attached to Sprouting Minds. So what you're able to do is, this is copied for every spell cast before it. So, you cast Yush, Inner Fire, Metamorphose, Lotus Petal, etc. This is often going to net you, 6, 7, 8 lands. So that's going to help fill up your hand even more for when you cast the other copies of Inner Fire. So now you have your entire hand filled up. A lot of it is basic lands. What do we do from there? Well, we have the card Tolarian Winds, which allows you to discard all the cards in your hand, and then you draw that many cards. So what you do is you get all the lands out of your library, right, the basic lands specifically, you get them out of your library with Sprouting Minds, and then you dump them all with Tolarian Winds, and then at that point you're just drawing pure gas. You're drawing, the remaining rituals, more Metamorphose, Lotus Petal, more Yushes, accumulating knowledge, cantrips, etc. And then you keep drawing cards, keep casting more rituals until you eventually find your one-up copy of Rolling Thunder. And then you throw it at the opponent, and then you win. So that's about as simple as I can explain it for those who are kind of unaware, and hopefully that makes some amount of sense. So let's look at some of the questions real quick. So what's the win con here? Rolling Thunder, and they got it pretty much right for the most part. So the first thing they ask is, with no counters, how do I beat counter spells? This card right here. Rouse, what it allows you to do is tap down all of your opponent's lands on their end step, and basically, they cannot cast the counter magic. So, there are a couple decks like Mystical Teachings, Tron, Blue-Black Flicker, Blue-Black Alchemy, Blue-Red Delver, where Rouse is surprisingly effective against those decks, because once you tap them out, you can just go off without having to worry. The time for Rouse is not effective is against cards like Daze, because you can't tap your opponent out of effects like that, because what Daze allows people to do, if I can pull it up here we go, is that you can return a land to your hand and then counter a spell unless it's control and pays 1. So Daze is kind of annoying because they can just cast it even when they're tapped out. Snap is another card, because what they can do is, they, in response to you casting Eatonrouse, they tap all their lands' floating mana, they let it resolve, and then with the floating mana, they bounce a creature back to their hand, and then they get to untap lands. So that can be a bit problematic. Mono Blue Delver is normally the deck where that is a problem. Familiars, they can do it, but they don't really play enough counter spells for you to care about that. At least not game 1. Not to mention they have a lot of bounce lands, so, Snap is like, it's annoying, but I found that Familiars is actually somewhat reasonable, although it is close. But Snap is annoying, and then the top dog of the format is Foil. So people have been asking, I know that was one question that came up was, how do you deal with Foil? You don't. At least not with the list that I went 5-0 with. I have no way to deal with Foil game 1, and then game 2 I have 1 copy of Dispel. When I went 5-0, I never ran into Foil, and it was not something that I was expecting to beat. I think the Blue-Black Delver decks are horrific for this particular list, mostly because of Foil. I have played that matchup before when my opponents were only on days, and I found that to be an insanely favorable matchup because it just had no way to interact with you game 1, besides applying a clock. There were some lists that had days and counterspells, and those were a little bit more tricky, but you would just tap them out of counterspell, and you can normally beat, a single copy of days, or in some cases you could even deal with 2 copies, but once Foil was added, that matchup became really, really bad, because Foil is just horrific. There's no way to deal with that, at least in the main board. If I were to try and want to actually beat Foil, I would probably do something along the lines of board like this, where main board I would have 2 Dispel, 3 Eatonrouse, 10 Cantrips, 8 Hard Draw. So I would try something like this, and then I would just sideboard, the 3 copies of Ultimate Bolas and call it a day. But Foil is just something I can't really deal with at the moment. But, that it is what it is. But Foil is just not something that I think I can realistically deal with. But if I were to try and update the deck for a Foil metagame, I would, once again, I would sideboard every copy of Ultimate Bolas, and I would just board in 2 Dispel into the main board, and this is what I would play. I think this is definitely doable, but I still think Foil is a really, really difficult card to deal with. Although I kind of like this main board, it doesn't seem that bad. I mean, you have 18 cards that just draw you more cards, like, it doesn't seem that bad, and then you have, some amount of protection here, so, if I were playing the deck in a Foil metagame, this is something I would try out. But yeah, so, with that said, I think I've answered the Foil question. Let's see, what other questions were there? Something about Foil. Oh, so how to spell in Rolling Thunder. So I'm going to talk about that real quick. So one question people have is, if you have a counterspell, in fact, I think that I remember reading a question somewhere, oh yeah, why are they not running Hermit Torch? So those kind of go hand in hand. So I'm going to pull up Hermit Torch for people who don't know what it does. And I don't believe I own it copy, so I'm going to have to own it quantity 0. So this is what the card does. It's another fireball effect, and as long as it's on the stack, it costs 2 more to cast, right? Why am I not playing Hermit Torch, and why am I playing Rolling Thunder, right? I'm going to put these side by side. I believe you can pull up a show preview pane, right? Why am I not playing Hermit Torch, right? Why am I instead playing Rolling Thunder? There's a couple reasons for it. First off, I'm going to reset quantity back to 1. And then I'm going to pull up, get it in here, Standard Bearer. This guy is really annoying, because when it's basically a Spellskite effect. For those who are unfamiliar with Spellskite, I'll pull up this card here. I don't believe I own a copy. For those who are unfamiliar, basically they can change the target of a spell or ability to spell state. And so, Standard Bearer is basically the proper version of spell state. And so what happens is, a lot of decks will play Standard Bearer. The Boros Monarch decks play Standard Bearer. Battles sometimes plays it. Tyro's Tribe plays it. It's a common card, right? And it shows up. I don't want to lose to this card, okay? Because if your opponent has 1 or 2 copies out, sometimes you lose to that, okay? Because if I have Pyramid Sword, what happens is I can only have 1 target, right? To any target, so it's only 1 thing I can target. If they have this out, I'm forced to kill it, and then I have to get my Fireball back with Conjurer's Bauble, and then throw it at my opponent, okay? But sometimes, if your opponent has 2 copies of this card out, you lose straight up, because you have to kill one, you get it back, and you have to kill the other, and then you cannot Fireball your opponent. But also, sometimes you have a Fireball in your hand, and you have to discard it to Tolarian Winds. And so at that point, Conjurer's Bauble has to get it back, and then you're forced to throw it at the Standard Bearer, and then you lose, because you have no way to get it back a second time. Not to mention, let's see if I can spell it right. There's another card that's very similar, called Coalition Honor Guard, which is basically the same thing, only it's a 2/4 instead of a 1/1, and the mana cost is slightly higher. But regardless, people play this card as well. I know various Tron archetypes will play it as like a sideboard card. But the bottom line is, this is a serious problem to lose to that if you're playing Pyramid Sword. So Rolling Thunder, what Rolling Thunder does is you can have multiple targets. So you can target their Standard Bearer for 1, and then the opponent for 1,000,000, right? And it doesn't matter how many Standard Bearers they have, right? They can have 1,000 Standard Bearers, right? It just says that you have to target at least one of them, right? So you don't have to target all of them, just target one of them for 1, and the opponent for 1,000,000. So Rolling Thunder beats that, and this is a much more problematic card, in my opinion, that, Pyramid Sword is just not worthwhile, right? I think because of this card, you should not be playing Pyramid Sword. Now, another thing people might ask is, well, what if they counterspell your Fireball? Don't you want to have a way to deal with that? And my answer is no. And the reason why I say that is because I've never had an opponent counterspell my Rolling Thunder. If you're smart, you should be counterspelling my Inner Fire, you should be counterspelling my Tolarian Winds. You should not be counterspelling my Wind Condition, and this is why. I've had people who, what they do is, I start going off, right? I start drawing my library. I draw, my copies of the spell. I draw Conjurer's Bauble. I have a lot of mana in play. And a couple things can happen. I've had games where my opponent will Rolling Thunder me. I will Rolling Thunder my opponent. They counterspell, and then I dispel them, and they lose, right? If they let me draw every card in my library. Or, what they'll do is I will Rolling Thunder them. They counterspell my Rolling Thunder. I get it back with Conjurer's Bauble, and I throw it at them a second time because I have so much mana in my mana pool. The bottom line is, don't counter my Rolling Thunder, because if you let me draw every card in my library, I can find ways to answer your counter spells. Whereas, if I only have a limited number of cards in my hand, and I'm just starting to go off, that's when you can try and disrupt me. Because if you let me get to my endgame, I'm very likely going to have a way to deal with what you're trying to do, So, that's why the spell pierce effect of Pyramid Sword doesn't matter, and why we should be hearing more about Standard Bearer than a simple spell pierce. So that's why I play Rolling Thunder. So I'm going to talk about the rest of the deck real quick, just as I know some people might have some questions on it. So the first question I might get is, why are you not playing a forest, right? Why are you not playing a forest in the main board? Because, you need to have green mana for Sprouting Vines. My response to that is, You don't need it. A forest does nothing useful. If you notice, the majority of this deck is blue spells. Forest does not help you cast 2 blue spells, and it does not help you cast Inner Fire. The bottom line is, we have 3 cards in the entire 75 that require green mana. Everything else requires blue or red. So you should probably stick to being a blue-red storm deck. Now you might be saying, well, how do you consistently get, your green mana? You rely on Lotus Petal and Manamorphose. That's it. You don't have to rely on a forest. Not to mention, a forest increases your mulligans, right? So let's say you cut an island for a forest. Well, now you have 4 lands that if it's a 1 land hand and the land is in your opening, you're probably forced to mulligan. Right? Here, if I have an opening land with 1 Ash Barrens, I have to mulligan. If I have an opening land with 1 mountain, I have to mulligan. Now, if I throw a forest in the mix, that's just increasing my rate to mulligan, right? So that's not even useful. So that's why I don't play forest. It's just not needed, and to be honest, you don't need to use a forest to cast Mounting Lines. Petal and Manamorphose are totally enough. Another question I might have is, why do you only play 12 basic lands? Don't you need more basic lands for Mounting Lines? No, I don't. Brainstorm is a really important card, and you need to have fetch lands for Brainstorm. Also, you have Ponder. You need to have fetch lands for Ponder. So the bottom line is, yes, basic lands are important for Mounting Lines, but you really don't need mono basic lands. In the very early iterations of this archetype, it was playing like all basic lands, and I think it was only playing 17 lands. Don't do that. That's really, really bad play, and it's also just bad deck design, because then you can't play Brainstorm, and Brainstorm is such a powerhouse that you should probably be playing fetch lands. So, yeah, that's the mana base. I'm playing 1 mountain because you need a red source, and Lotus Petal is something you cannot always rely on for a red source, but, it is, you basically need, to go off, you need to have 3 islands and a mountain in play, or 3 islands and a Lotus Petal, so you need to have 1 mountain to start the rituals, but that's about it. Another question that people were asking in the thread is, why am I playing Snowlands? It's mostly for the bluff of being on Izzet Delver. If you look me up, if you look up Raptor 56 and you look up my tournament results, you'll see that I tend to play Izzet Delver quite a bit, and the most success I've had is with Izzet Delver. I'm on 7-0 in challenges. I'm also on 6-0 in challenges. I mean, I'm top 8 in back-to-back challenges with it, and it's the net I've had the most success with. So if I can have Snow-Covered lands, people might think I'm on Blue-Red Delver. In terms of the hand trips, I'm just playing 4 Brainstorm, 3 Preordain, 3 Ponder. Hand trips are really important. You need to maximize them. Brainstorm is the best hand trip in this deck. There's so many neat, cool tricks you can do with it. But for the sake of discussion, I'm going to try and keep it simple, because I don't want this to be an insanely long video. But Brainstorm, there's really cool tricks you can do with cards like Sprouting Vines and Solarian Winds and Sprouting Vines. Like, there's a lot of cool tricks with that. You can put back your Rolling Thunder so you don't have to discard it. The list goes on, but Brainstorm's a powerhouse, and that's why we play 4 of it, as opposed to, like, 4 Preordain or 4 Ponder. Yash is a requirement. You have to play 4. The deck does not function without Yash, because you need to have ways to add to the Storm count and draw cards, and fill up your hand for Inner Fire, so Yash is just essential. You have to play 4. Why am I playing Accumulated Knowledge? Basically, this allows you to finish comboing off. When you combo, there's sort of 2 stages to the combo turn. The first stage is setting up Solarian Winds Mounting Lines, and the second stage is, after you've done that, you haven't drawn every card in your library. You still have roughly 15 to 20 cards left, and Accumulated Knowledge allows you to sort of draw the rest of your library in an effective manner, so that's why I play it. For the rituals, we have to have 4 Inner Fire, we have to have 4 Manamorphose, we have to have 3 Lotus Petal. I only play 3 as opposed to 4, because I really hate drawing multiples, and you really only need 3. 4 copies is a little excessive, in my opinion anyways. I kind of brushed over this guy. Alternate Bolas is a great 2 of. It's another way that synergize with Brainstorm and Ponder. Also, it's a 1/3 body that can block various creatures, and I think that's really important against the aggressive meta. However, with cards like Foil being so popular, you might just have to sideboard them in favor of cards like Dispel. So, it's kind of tricky to find, enough slots, but I think Otter is like really the only flex slot at this point. I'm not gonna cut any of the handpicks or Yash or 8K or the combo pieces or whatnot. I think we really only have 2 flex slots at this point, so just something to keep in mind. Surrounding rounds and Tolarian Winds, that's one of the main combo. I'm only playing 3 copies of each because they are really, really bad to draw in multiples. You really only want to see 1 copy every game, and drawing multiples is terrible because multiple copies do nothing. Not to mention, since we have so much card draw and selection, it's very likely you're going to find the copies that you can play 3 and get away with it. Not to mention, slots are really tight, and I don't want to hunt anything else for like another copy of them. So that's that. Hunter's Bauble. I'm playing this because if you just earn your Rolling Thunder to Tolarian Winds, you need to have a way to get it back, and that's why I play Hunter's Bauble. It can also be quite nice to get back more copies of Inner Fire. It can get back the spells or whatever. Eaton Rouse, this is the main form of protection. However, as stated, in a foil meta game, you might need to start mainboarding the spells. So that's the main board. The sideboard, it's really whatever. I'll talk about it. Electric, it was for elves. Deathshot was for elves and inside out combo along with Delver. Flaring Pain is for anything like Circle of Protection Red or Prismatic Strands, because if you try and Rolling Thunder them and they Prismatic Strands, you lose, so Flaring Pain is a way to deal with that. Hydroblast is for any red decks. Burn, Izzet Blitz, whatever. Dispel is just interaction. I believe I had a deep analysis in here. That was for any deck that was playing hand disruption. It's just a way to sort of go long and deal with your hand disruption. It's also quite useful in the control matchups. For Eaton Rouse, mostly for the control matchups, and then Alter Bolas was for the aggressive decks. Really Shaman was for Affinity mostly, along with things like Relic, and that's about it. I'm going to play this in a quick solitaire match, so I have it pulled up here. Before I do that, I'm just going to make sure that I've answered most of the questions. Let's see. I think that's about it. I think I've answered every question. If I missed one, feel free to let me know, but I believe that's everything. Trying to, I'm gonna, before I do the thing, the solitaire match, I'm gonna talk about the elite and how I actually went 5-0. I played against 2 Pestilence nets, 2, Tron nets, and then 1 red net wins. Tron is quite favorable because they're pretty slow most of the time, as long as they're not playing like Olamox Rusher or Genroma Horror, and my opponent was not. Pestilence is also great because they cannot interact with me on a significant scale. All they have is creature removal, and the only way they can really win is with cards like Castigate. Because with Castigate, they can exile my Rolling Thunder from my hand. I'm going to pull it up here real quick, just for people who don't know what that card does. What Castigate does is your opponent reveals their hand and you choose an online card from it and exile it. So if I have Rolling Thunder in my hand and they castigate it from me, I lose. But that has never happened because I have Brainstorm and all sorts of 1-0s, so the odds of that are pretty low. So that is something to keep in mind. And then I played against Red Net Wins, and you saw my sideboard. I had Quad Hydroblast, I had Alter Bolas, and basically I just grew well and my sideboard lined up. One thing to note is that competitive leagues, since there's not a ton of people in them, they love to pair you up against the same people twice, which is why I played against 2 Pestilence and 2 Tron. It was the same person. So the Pestilence players were both the same person, and the Tron players were both the same person, and that just sort of allowed me to, kind of get some free wins, because competitive leagues do that. Last thing is that I played this during a whatchamacallit, I did it during a proper challenge because I know most of the people who are in competitive leagues, a lot of them like to play Blue Black Delver, but if you do it during the challenge, when all the Blue Black Delver players are in the challenge, it decreases the likelihood of you running into Blue Black Delver, which is arguably an unwinnable matchup. So that's sort of what I did. I just sort of strategized and got really lucky. And also the fact that competitive leagues love to pair you up against the same person. So that's kind of how it happened. Is it legitimate? I don't know, but it's a 5-0. So in terms of opening hands, this is definitely a keep. I'm sort of hesitant to lead up on a preordain because I don't want to get brainstorm a lot, so I might pass here. And now I would brainstorm. Wow, that was a really good brainstorm. I'm going to put back a land and probably another copy of brainstorm. Play a land here and pass. I'm going to drop brainstorm here. Then I can cast Altar Bolas, getting another copy of Gush. Then I can cast Preordain. I want both of these, so I'll top, pass the turn. Here I can cast brainstorm, put back probably 2 redundant lands, get a cycle here, and at this point, I would probably brainstorm again, put back 2 preordains, cast the ponder, I'll say any order and shuffle, and you can see redundant copies are really bad, you know, tap for 1, whatever, and now this is the combo turn, so despite the fact that it says turn 4, it's actually turn 5. I don't know why this isn't accurate, but you can clearly see I have a land drop for the turn, so there's no way it can be a turn 4, so I don't know why it's incorrect about that, but normally turn 5 is when you try and combo. Now, it's important to note, while I don't have Tolarian Winds in my hand, it's still very likely that I can combo here, so I would most likely go for it if I was afforded the luxury of doing so. So here I'm just going to double Gush and then cast Inner Fire. So as you can see, I do Rolling Thunder, so I would have to discard that if it came to it. And it has Metamorphose, getting 1 green, 1 blue. And at this point, I might just have a natural kill. So before I do anything, with Bounding Vines, you want to make sure you get every land out of your list. And if you notice, I have 12 basic lands, meaning I need to get all, that's how many basics I have total, basically. So how you calculate this, and kind of a nice shortcut, is look at the storm count and then count the number of basic lands that you have. So here I have 5, right, 4 islands, 1 mountain. And then I have the storm count 4 for a total of 11. And then there's no basic lands in my library, or in my graveyard. So currently the total is 9. And so then I have to increase the storm count by 3 to get it up to the number 12. So what I would do is I would hold control, I would cast Inner Fire, and so now here I'm holding priority, then I would cast Accumulated Knowledge, and then I would cast Bounding Vines. And so now you can see, if I, whoops, my mouse kind of went crazy there, but, now I can get basically every land out of my, library. Whoops, we're not gonna empty our mana pool just yet. So now I'm not quite dead. I do draw a Metamorphosis, which is pretty important. I'm gonna get double blue. Ooh, and I drew Tolarian Winds, so we're good. So now what I would do is I would hold control, I would cast the Accumulated Knowledge. Oh, I don't know why that didn't let me hold priority there. A little odd, I'll admit, but it is what it is. Yeah, that's kind of a problem, because if I remember correctly, yeah, whatever. I'll just kind of go for it, I suppose. Yeah, that was a little bit annoying. I was trying to hold control there and it didn't let me. In some cases that can actually be a problem, so you gotta make sure you hold control, but we're all right there. So now what I'll do is I'll play, Contract Bubble, and you can see I haven't actually drawn my entire library. In this case, I have 8 cards, but in other cases, you'll have more. So that's why it's good to have Accumulated Knowledge, because it allows you to sort of draw through your library in an efficient manner. So here what I can do is I can cast 8K for 3, and then I can cast Metamorphose, and hopefully I find my last copy, Accumulated Knowledge, and then sort of get the perfect. Here it is. Draw every card in my library. Now you kind of have to be careful to not, like, cast Metamorphose, because if you do that, you'll lose. But yeah, so now I have all my Lotus Petals. In this case, I never needed them because I had the Mountain to start it off. But sometimes they take the role of Metamorphose and generating green mana, so, you know, they're always important to have. But yeah, so I'm going to just get every color in the rainbow here. Let's, you know, get all the colors. And Rolling Thunder. So this is going to be Rolling Thunder for, say, 46, I believe. Now, just to point something out, let's say I still had my Hunter's Bauble and I didn't roll my Rolling Thunder. If my opponent's at 20 life, I would hit them for 20 on the dot. And if they counterspell it, then I'll Hunter's Bauble map my Rolling Thunder and throw it at them a second time. Which is why, once again, it's a bad idea to counter Rolling Thunder. You should be countering, you know, Inner Fires and whatnot. So, there's something to keep in mind. So, we're going to go for 44, or, excuse me, 46. And that will be lethal. So that's sort of how the deck works, and I hope you learned something. I believe I answered everything for the most part. So yeah, I hope you learned something. If there's any questions I was not able to answer, please let me know. And yeah, I hope you learned something. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.